The Sixers season is rapidly approaching and training camp is just about here. Today I'm here to break down why the James Harden and Joel Embiid situation may be a little more tied than we have been acknowledging and my personal concern for it. Before I dive fully into it, I would like to recommend to make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button on the channel here on Sixers Digest. As of now, over 90% of you have not subscribed, and we want to get that changed. We're right near that 1,000 subscriber mark. I want to make sure we hit it, and you guys can help us out by just hitting that button there. I do appreciate it. We have a ton of big plans coming up for the season to keep breaking down some awesome content for the Sixers, and I cannot wait to get to it. Want each of you guys along for the journey. Now, for today's video, I do want to dive in on the James Harden and Joel Embiid situation. I already just released a video on the channel talking about the report of James Harden may not be showing up to Media Day specifically. I don't think that's the biggest deal in the world. I honestly took the position in this video and still feel that this way, that it will be a bigger deal when James Harden is in the building, that I think he can do much more damage from inside than staying away from the team. So I don't think it's a big deal that he's missing. And the biggest thing that I'm interested is his ties to Joel Embiid. So I want to bring up a couple quotes here. I want to start off with this one here from Ramona Shelburne here. This was on the Low Post podcast with Zach Lowe, and Ramona said, quote, "I don't know if he and Daryl Morey work it out, but I think he has to compartmentalize and just play it out," Shelburne explained. Nick Nurse, I mean, look, if you hired this coach who won a championship, Kawhi Leonard, who never wanted to be in Toronto, who played it out and literally got traded to Toronto, and they sort of talked him into being there, I think Nick can make this work. I think Harden has kept the bridges open with his teammates. I don't know if there is as strong of a bond as there was at the beginning of the summer. He put all of them in a tough situation as well, but he was invited to Joel Embiid's wedding. He did not go, but that doesn't mean they don't like each other. They're still in communication. They still talk. I think everybody involved has this attitude of this is between James and Daryl. So I do think the ending of that is the most noteworthy part of that. This is an issue between Daryl Morey and James Harden. This is not an issue between Joel Embiid and James Harden, Tyrese Maxey and James Harden, or really the organization as a whole. This is a beef, not even a beef. This is a relationship that extends from far beyond their Sixers ties. Obviously, Daryl Morey when he was the general manager of the Houston Rockets, and James Harden when he was the superstar of the Houston Rockets. And that's why this hurts so bad, and that's, to be honest, why James Harden's feelings are as hurt as they are, is he felt there was more loyalty than there was. That at the end of the day, this is a business, and Daryl Morey, it's his job to make the proper decisions for what is right for the Sixers. And that's kind of the ultimate reason for this unraveling here. Now, why I think this is interesting, directly tied to Joel Embiid, is by all accounts, Joel Embiid and James Harden have a pretty great relationship. That these two see eye to eye more so than most stars in NBA. I don't think Joel Embiid would have won MVP without James Harden. I don't think he would have seen his production from a scoring standpoint grow in the way that he did. Now 2 consecutive years leading the league in scoring. Year 1 was kind of by default when it was the Ben Simmons holdout situation where Harden, we saw him average about 31 per game, Joel Embiid in that season. That felt like way more Joel Embiid putting on himself to make sure he got it done. This year, it felt like James Harden setting up Joel, him getting easier buckets than he's seen in his life. And Embiid has been particularly not pro Harden, but I guess just more understanding of the situation when asked. As I mentioned, we have Media Day coming right up, and there's going to be a ton of other questions, and they're going to have to be held to the fire for more specific answers there. But I do think it's noteworthy. To dive into this next piece here that I want to pull up, another blurb from that quote from Ramona Shelburne on the Low Post podcast. And she says here, quote, "There are some people close to Harden who say, absolutely not. He's never going to play with the Sixers again. He's so stubborn. He's so hurt and betrayed. I can't see him ever doing that." Then there's other people who are sort of suggesting he's going to come in and be in the best shape of his life, be amazing, and reestablish his value in the NBA. This is the difficult situation that James Harden is in, that while he wants to burn the bridges and make such a toxic atmosphere that eventually gets him sent out, the goal for him is to sign another massive contract, and that does not help him in the areas, especially when it's the case that he's already at the lowest value of his career and has the lack of teams interested, that there's no longer a blank check attached to James Harden, and there's no other real landing spots for James Harden. This Clippers landing spot that he created was more or less handpicked by Harden. There really has not been very many concrete reports of the Clippers even being that interested in James Harden. And when there's reports coming out of them being unwilling to even include guys like Terrence Mann to get James Harden, then there's just not that much of genuine interest there. And the Clippers are probably one of the more likely teams. I mean, you look around the NBA, and I get it. James Harden is a good player. I'm not saying he doesn't belong in the NBA. Look at these stats from this season. 21 points per game, 6.1 rebounds, 10.7 assists, which led the NBA in assists. He's a very good basketball player. But he also plays in a very specific way. He's a very niche style of play. and that does not fit on all teams. We saw him kind of drum up the Rockets' interest there, try to create a market there. They ultimately decided to hand Fred VanVleet the money that felt like it was made for James Harden. So the demand is at an all-time low for James Harden. Now, as far as the Embiid specifically, the reason that I think this is relevant is Joel Embiid has sat through so much with this Sixers franchise. I mean, he's been through former general managers talking about him on burner accounts. He's been through 2 number 1 picks who either never learned or forgot how to shoot. He's been through the Ben Simmons holdout situation. He saw Jimmy Butler. The list goes on and on. This is a guy who is on his 3rd head coach, 5th general manager, over 150 teammates at this point. Joel Embiid has been the stability of the franchise. But there has to be an end of everything. And when you think about even looking at earlier this summer when Joel Embiid's having quotes such as this saying, quote, "I just want to win a championship, whatever it takes." Embiid said in an interview with Maverick Carter that took place Thursday at the Uninterrupted Sports Film Festival, "I don't know where that's going to be, whether it's in Philly or anywhere else. I just want to have a chance to accomplish that. I want to see what it feels like to win that first one, and then you can think about the next one. It's not easy, but it takes more than 1 or 2, 3 guys. You got to have good people around you, and myself every single day. I work hard to be at that level so I can make it happen. So every single day, I'm working towards that." Now, the sentiment of this message, I love that he wants to win a championship. That's great. But whether that's in Philly or somewhere else is not great to hear. And now when we head into this season, we know the distraction of James Harden's going to be there. How does this all fit in the puzzle? Is this a point where Joel Embiid just gets sick of all the nonsense, wants to go to a more normal franchise and just something where there isn't something in the headlines all the time? I would understand it. Or is it a point where James Harden and Joel Embiid are pretty close? Does James Harden start to try and break down that barrier from the Sixers' perspective and get in his ear? And as much as I do support Daryl Morey and think for the most part he's been good, there's a real chance that he operated in the wrong in some of this situation. Personally, I try and stay out of judging a lot of this because a lot of these conversations are going to be things purely between Daryl Morey and James Harden. But if you believe James Harden's side of the story entirely, which I personally don't really buy into, but if you do, then Daryl Morey is in the wrong. If Daryl Morey said to James Harden, "You opt into this contract and I guarantee I will trade you," and now he's not, that's wrong. That's bad business practice. That's just messed up to a guy that you have this long-standing history with. And to the same breath, if there was this handshake deal last offseason, which has been ultimately denied, and the league has investigated this twice now and said it does not exist. But again, these are conversations specifically between Morey and James Harden. And if that conversation last offseason was, you take this $14 million pay cut now, we will bring in PJ Tucker, we will bring in Daniel House, we'll bring in Montrezl Harrell, guys that you're friends with and want to play with, and then next offseason, we'll reward you with a more lucrative contract, and we get here, and the contract isn't delivered, I do understand James Harden being upset by that. But the mindset from here on out has to be how to make sure Joel Embiid's healthy or happy. How to make sure Joel Embiid is happy. If that means getting James Harden out of here as soon as possible, even if that doesn't reach the fair market value in a trade from your perception, you kind of have to swallow that. Does that mean trying to get James Harden back on the floor and playing with Joel Embiid, who by all accounts, they are very compatible as basketball players on the court together? I know that's Daryl Morey's best case scenario, and I know that because he has said it. I mean, just a couple months ago on the 97 Fanatic, that he had this quote here saying, "We'd all be thrilled if Harden rescinded his trade request during a radio interview. Quote, James is a Hall of Famer, one of the best players offensively to ever do it," Morey said. "We're either going to move him for a player that helps us win now, we're going to get the assets that allow us to go get a good player in the short term, or we're going to continue to wait and continue to look for other players like Maxey or Joel to take a step forward in that situation." Both of these players had been in the position way too recently when disgruntled guard Ben Simmons sat out of training camp in 2021 rather than play for the Sixers again. So it is a little funny that there is a history there. There is experience from all those guys. But I don't know if this hardball approach is the right answer to this. I've said it 1,000 times, but I still stand by neither Daryl Morey nor James Harden are the guys that I would like to play hardball with. And both these guys should be well aware about that, about each other at this point. But while Morey tends to be blinded by the situation in making sure that he wins a deal or he gets his perceived value, there's a real chance there's an implosion going on the inside that you must be much more aware of. So that's my fear for this season, is don't let James Harden burn down the building from within while you fight for this fair value on the outside. That if it gets to that point where there is more harm than good of James Harden being there, I get it. Even if it is a step back from the player, sometimes you have to swallow that. That's where I feel that I will be paying attention to. And once again, we don't know what the outlook for James Harden was. Even him skipping media day at the start, to me, does not raise a concern. Honestly, I'm happier about it. That takes one distraction out of the way. And sure, all these guys are still going to have to face the questions, face the music, but it means James Harden is not there to cause a stir. And by the way, when his long-term goal is to get another max contract or another significant deal, it is in his best interest to show up, work hard, and play good basketball. So maybe he does turn another chapter. Maybe there is that outlook. Maybe some sense is shaken into him from that perspective. At this point, there are more questions than answers. We will find out what happened as training camp gets closer. But I guess the bottom line is that there is no more kicking the can down the line here. That the season is here, training camp is here, and you guys all have to make decisions about how you are going to handle this. So from here, that's what I will be paying attention to. But I will say, a fear of mine is that Daryl Morey will be too focused on winning the deal rather than making sure the franchise is heading in the right direction. For now, we will wait and see how things go. Once again, guys, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Ring that bell so you're not missing out on any of the awesome content that we have coming out here. I have plenty more plans that I can't wait to dive into as the regular season gets closer. Once again, thanks for watching this video. Drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts, and I will talk with you next time. Peace.